Hey, cheerleaders. Chris Mack coming at you with Jim Lee's WildCats #2. Now, before we get into this, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Christopher. We're both part of a group called Sacred Collectibles, and it's just a bunch of, collectors and lovers of pop culture that come together. And I've been screaming that I've been looking for the WildCats series, and so he hooked me up with issues 2 through 14, I think it was. So thank you so much, man. And because of his generosity here, we'll be able to continue doing this series. And I've been loving each issue, and I'm so glad that I got the first printing 3D cover. That thing is sweet. So appreciate you, man. Now, it's been a while since I've done issue 1, and then I got issue 4, so we kind of had that gap. So now we're kind of going back in time. And I'm glad because things start to make a little more sense. And what I really like about this book is the fact that stakes happen immediately. So we're introduced to a cat named Lynch, and he's part of the U.S. government, and he's noticing all these things going off. And from the last issue, there was this big explosion, which kind of puts, rings the bells and puts them on alert. And as all that's happening, then we are introduced once again here to the full team of the WildCats, and they just look so awesome. And I love the way how Void's doing the teleportation. So I love how the art team just took and made her look kind of like the T-1000, where she's just kind of murky. That is really great work. And then just the background, how everything is just powerful. And of course, Maul, Void, Grifter, Zealot, Spartan, Marlowe, Warblade, and Voodoo, which is the newest edition, which was kind of the big fight from the last issue over who was going to get this new Gifted. And man, it just looks so good. Now, one thing about these comic series that I miss, and while I'm talking about that, let's look at this great 90s panel. It's kind of a pain because, you have to flip it this way to read it, but I enjoy it. One thing I miss about comics from this time is when the heroes and the villains were clearly defined. Now, a lot of books nowadays kind of have that blurry gray line, Dawn of X being an example, where the X-Men now feel more like dictators rather than this group of people that are being oppressed. It just kind of feels very, as I just said, dictatorship. And done in the right hands, for example, Alan Moore with Watchmen, or Frank Miller with Batman Year One, where they, and not just Year One, but The Dark Knight Returns, where you kind of deconstruct a hero. But the thing is when you deconstruct a hero or make them seem kind of murky, there has to be redeeming qualities, or there has to be a way, steps back to building them to a whole character. And a lot of people just leave them broken nowadays, and it shows. As we're here, yes, there are some killers, there are some rogues, but they know that if they let the Daemonites get their hands on this, continue this what's called Project Reunification, then they know all hell is going to break loose on Earth. And given as this is the second issue, Zealot, Grifter, and Voodoo are the newest additions to the team. And of course, this is supposed to be the Lord Imp, who is from, not Daemonite, Cherubim descendant. They kind of left that omitted in the cartoon. But I like how Grifter's like, Marlowe says, who's I.O., who is, I just said the guy's name and I just forgot it. Oh, man. I hate when I have blonde moments like that. Hang on a second. Lynch. There it is. Had to go back through my notes. But anyway, he's part of I.O., and Marlowe goes, I.O.? Never heard of him. That's the way they like it. They're cutting edge, spy tech, specializing in blind eye covert operations. Here and abroad, little buddy. The name's Marlowe. Jacob Marlowe. Sure, little buddy. And so you can see a Grifter is just very disrespectful to the team leader here, and I like that Zealot kind of, she's like, Brother Grifter, you will address Lord Imp with proper respect. So you can see that they're not exactly a fine-tuned machine yet. And then as the stakes continue, if you remember from the last issue, if not, pause this, go check out issue 1. There's a towards the beginning of the book, Void is having all these kind of like fractured thoughts, and she thought they were just like a dream. But she says, I now realize that I've in fact come back in time from a timeline where I made a decision too late. All of you died in the explosion because of my mistake. So that's kind of cool. And I like how Maul here, he's just kind of like, so does that mean we just created a new timeline? I kind of like the old one, if I can remember it. Maul's kind of my favorite, because he's sort of like the comedy relief in a sense. And one thing, I don't think they really referenced it in the show, but in the comic book is the larger that Maul gets, the smaller his intelligent levels go. So he has to be careful, or else he could completely forget himself and just not distinguish good or bad and just mow everyone down. And some of these panels, like I love this down perspective, and we're back at the IO, and here's Lynch, and we see a body, and they're talking about how he tried to interfere with the PSYOP operation that Void was doing. I think it was Void. But yeah, I don't want to get too much into it. I'm trying to, I'm trying to not spoil this book, so I want you guys to go to your local comic shop and pick it up. But needless to say, Lynch here says, activate Black Razor 1. It's time to pay a surprise visit of our own, meaning against the WildCats. Now, real quick, what's kind of funny is, today's, what is it today? Today's Thursday, right? Yeah, today's Thursday, October 1st, right? Thursday, October 1st? Yeah, had to stop and think about it. Now, it kind of makes me laugh. Is this, the print date on this says October 2nd, which was like when the book was released, but the print date, from what I understand, was September 2020. So, or not 2020, 1992. So here we are years later, and you would think it's just kind of ironic that, what's going on here in 2020, and then we see here a panel talking, Marlo saying everyone to go vote. So I just thought that was kind of funny that we're kind of in that same in-between here, however many years later from 1992. So that just kind of made me laugh. But anyway, back to the comic. And here, again, we kind of get this uneasy alliance to a degree, because Spartan, Warblade, and Maul are kind of the new, or not the new, but they're kind of the mainstay characters thus far. And what's happening is, Marlo's talking to the new members, which would be Zealot, Grifter, and Voodoo. And Warblade's here is like, it's not that I don't trust the man, meaning Marlo. He goes, I just don't like being treated like some grunt while I'm fighting his war. Because, they're working on the Marv, and he has all these other people instead of it being like a team thing. So I can kind of understand his plight, but it's like, if you've been with the team long enough, don't do that, or give your leader some credit. And so this is where we're first told about Voodoo's power, where she's able to see someone like a human being and see if they're abducted by, or possessed by daemonites or not, and how she's able to exorcise them. And so she's able to point out who that's part of that Project Reunification is a daemonite. And what I enjoy here is that Voodoo is kind of the gateway into this world for the readers. And now, she's not sure if she really wants to join the teams, but Marlo makes a good point to her, talking about how, you can go back to hiding, but they'll find you. As where, join us and you have a chance of survival. And she's like, but I don't understand what all this is about. And so, how I'm always talking about, I don't like a lot of dialogue in a comic. Meaning, yes, there needs to be dialogue, but not to the point where it's just like, oh my God, so like exposition dumps. This is kind of what that is here. But it makes sense. As I just said, Voodoo is this new character. She doesn't know anything about what's going on. So Zealot gives her a breakdown of the Carabum, the Daemonites, the Coda, and what their war on Earth is here. So it's important information, and it talks, and then Marlo explains how he's involved in it. He goes, but I do know that I need you. Trust me, and I'll protect you. I give you my word. And so before we can get an answer, this is kind of where I like where they change beats, where we don't really get an answer from Voodoo. But then we're jumped over to Hellspawn and his lackeys here talking about how they're setting up all their key players here in the government to launch Project Reunification. And then we go back to another beat. Here, these new members, or Zealot, the new members, training with Warblade and Maul. And it's just kind of cool because it gives you a moment to breathe after all this information we've taken in. But as you're reading it, you know that you're not going to get that long of a break, because as you see them sparring, we start seeing stuff like Razor 1 to control, sensor spikes planted and activated. Razor 2 to control, thermal and motion detectors registering targets inside the building. And so while this is going on, you can't help but laugh because Warblade's like, I'm going to get you. And she goes, now that you're in close, you're too close to use your flexing powers, allowing me to do this. And she just cold cocks Warblade. That is so cool. But before we can get any more into it, the tension finally explodes. And here comes Lynch's IO's blackout teams. And with that, we get a gorgeous piece of artwork here of Maul and Spartan and Grifter going into battle. And you flip this advertisement, and you get an equally gorgeous full page of Zealot just ripping through these guys, showing the type of Kodo warrior she is. That is wonderful work. Now, before any more action, and I don't want to spoil it, what happens is you find out that Lynch and Marlowe know each other. There's a panel I wanted to show. Let me see if I missed it. Yes, before we go into that, the operatives grab Voodoo, and they talk about how they want to blow her brains out. And so, she's kind of had this innocent look on her face the whole time. But then all of a sudden, she just goes full on berserk. So you're just kind of like, wait, what? This is completely a 180 of her mannerisms. So I'm excited to see where this goes and why she was able to just go feral so flippin' quick. Now, after that, you don't really get any more answers. Here, Lynch and Marlowe remind me of Magneto and Xavier. They're kind of creating an uneasy alliance and a lot of compromises in order to work together to take out the Daemonites and how, what they're planning to utilize from the U.S. government. Now, I don't want to give any more away in terms of story, but I just want to show this gorgeous page of Maul busting in on the Daemonites. You see Pike getting his butt knocked down. And I like how we get the panel here, panel, and then this one just kind of bleeds over into the second page, and then we just kind of get regular paneling. So I like how the two pages here are utilized in that sense. That's just really great composition, in my opinion. Now, this is the last page I want to show. This is where Rob Liefeld's Youngbloods enter this stage. Because remember from issue 4, I said, what are the Youngbloods doing here? Well, this is where they enter this scene in this comic series. So yeah, guys, this comic book, great storytelling, great artwork. Now, a lot of people will be like, oh, it's just an issue. Sure, I get it. But in terms of like story structure, how the beats, the way you can take a moment to breathe from one story to hop into other parts and how it builds tension, a lot of books don't do that anymore. Especially when I was talking about the exposition dump from Zealot when she's introducing what the Daemonites and the Cherubim are to Voodoo. That's necessary information, as where in a lot of modern comics we'll get like this large of a dialogue box of people just talking, and it doesn't serve the story whatsoever. Like half of what the person's talking about could be driven through the art. That's what I mean by show don't tell, and use dialogue only necessary when it helps move the story beats, not to slow the whole thing down and you're just like you're falling asleep and having to read the book 4 or 5 times. This had a good pace. And that's the one thing about modern comics that I really do miss is pacing. And just great artwork. I mean, look at the way these guys kick butt. Speaking of which, I totally forgot to do this at the beginning. It's Jim Lee, co-creator, writer, penciler. Brandon Choi, co-creator, writer. Scott Williams doing the ink, Mike Kessler doing the lettering, Joe Chiodo doing the colors, and here's everyone else that worked on the book. I was just too flippin' excited to jump into it, so at least here at the end I gave credit where credit is due. So if y'all have enjoyed this comic book, we really would say please go first and foremost, go support your local comic shop and see if they have any of these in stock. If not, then may I suggest checking out Sacred and checking out those the live auctions, because they do comic books, figures, pops, anything that you can look for. So there's another route for you guys in case you can't find it at your LCS or you don't have one in your area. Man, I have not had enough coffee today. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel grow more than you could possibly know, and we really very much appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Wildcat bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love just interacting with y'all, hearing your feedback, and just growing a community. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.